Hey, Justin, welcome again to our another podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Dharam. How are you?
I'm doing great. Down under in Sydney nowadays. Travel for some, few things. It's almost done, but yeah, I'm still in Sydney, enjoying this wet, sunny weather here.
Well, gosh, I suppose it's what is it? Summer going into fall down there, right?
Exactly, exactly. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they're opposite. Yeah, I've been doing a ton of traveling myself. This last 3 weeks has been a marathon for me, from Saudi Arabia to the east coast of the U.S., back to Saudi, to then go to Abu Dhabi for 2 weeks, and I just got back to Riyadh yesterday myself, and so I'm looking forward to just being in my own bed for a couple weeks. It'd be nice, but I don't think that that's going to last long. But well, I'll take it while I can, right?
enjoy your bed for some time. Yes, that's it. All right. So look, thanks Justin for putting your time, giving me time, and helping me to build this knowledge bank. And your contribution is really appreciated. So on the in the same series, I have another topic which we know what we're going to talk about. It's all very exciting time. Actually, very exciting time for PMO. PMO being project management office, program management office, portfolio management office, EPMO, whatnot. So, what's your thoughts on PMO?
Well, it's one of them, interesting enough. Depends on the number one, the company and their way of doing business. I just kind of for my own edification or humor, however you want to call it. I did a Google search recently of, what does a PMO mean? Obviously, other than the specific acronym, and I was amazed at how many different definitions that you could find for one. Certainly, PMI has its definition, but the interesting enough, I found a lot of folks interpret a PMO to really kind of be a almost become a how do I want to say, kind of a hybrid steering committee where they really just come together to solve a particular issue that an organization isn't able to resolve on its own. So I found that one very interesting. And of course, traditionally going with the PMI way of, well, it's there to support the project, and the templates and execution and everything else. And of course, when you sit there and look at both perspectives, going, well, if the PMO existed from the start, you may not necessarily have the particular issue that you need a PMO to solve now. But especially in an agile world that really we kind of live in now, with post COVID, and everyone is geographically separated. Everyone is learning how to figure out how to do business leaner, faster, and without sacrificing quality. So it's a very interesting topic. I don't necessarily know if I will have the answers, but certainly I can share some of the insights. Certainly there's times where I feel that it's definitely needed, especially when you get into some of the larger, more complicated projects. Certainly here within Saudi Arabia, the things that are happening in the giga project world, it's so crucial to have that kind of a central PMO, just from a communication standpoint, because there's so many moving parts. And when organizations get so big, they become very siloed, and one doesn't talk to the other, and then you're kind of wasting money and time when you end up finding out that two different organizations are ending up doing the same type of job, and that's not good for anybody. So fun discussion. Looking forward to it today.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for giving some insight. The starting point for PMO. Okay, so a lot to talk. PMO is evolving, as we know, a lot to learn from the current and the future PMOs. So my first question is how PMOs must digitalize and evolve to support their organization's digital transformation.
Well, certainly within this first one, as I kind of already alluded to it, the costs are a big thing in a PMO, and an organization, especially that's maybe not as big, that's a tough cost to justify. And so, from a PMO standpoint, for them to be able to really justify some of the costs, they have to be able to be very innovative, finding ways to make life of project managers that are trying to execute within a program or portfolio. I think is very much needed,
Mm,
and can kind of take care of some of the burden that PMs typically will have on their shoulders. I know, given my experience, having a PMO where it can help me with a certain template, or being able to go back into a repository to be able to understand, hey, what particular situation that's happened in the past could help me make an informed decision. Not having that is makes a PM be very blind, quite frankly, when they're trying to make some decisions, especially when situations happen quite often. And so, from a PMO standpoint, I think it's very important from that relevancy. Number one, be constantly kind of on the razor's edge of finding those new innovative ways to be able to, number one, support the project program portfolio, but also being able to look at in the future, finding new ways to be better, because ultimately in this interconnected global world that we're in, it's
mm.
not just the U.S. competing against U.S. companies. It's U.S. competing against anyone from anywhere in the world, and that's going to be important for the company to remain competitive and be at the top of their game.
Exactly, definitely. So very, very important to evolve. The PMO have to look not just traditional supports, admin, meeting minutes kind of role into more strategic role, so that they can play or support, guide, direct, or assist the major programs, major projects happening in the organization.
Yeah, that the PMO, I think, especially like I said, in the Giga projects, that is the most critical role to maintain efficiency, because there's just so many moving parts,
Mm,
and that particular organization, from a PMO standpoint, can really eliminate a lot of the waste, and that in and of itself, I feel, can a PMO can truly justify their own existence and their own cost, because they're saving all of that redundant work that undoubtedly is going to happen in a huge effort like a NEOM or a Kadia or things like that around the world. Just it's so important.
yeah, and other perspective, PMO is a center of excellence. So, project manager may come and go, but they have to stay as a group for entire project. So they need to be a center of excellence, knowing everything. They have their own subject matter experts, like benefit managers, stakeholder engagement, somebody responsible for procurement, and they are the center of excellence, and they need to grow. They do need to learn how can we better, or how can we support the project managers to deliver the work more efficiently.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, what is or is not a PMO? What is PMO? What is not a PMO?
Yeah, like I said, I think that's a very subjective type question. And as
Mm,
I guess I probably stole my own thunder and answered my own question earlier today in the introduction. I think it's truly what a particular organization wants to define it as. But with that being said, from a traditional standpoint, like you just said, a true center of excellence, being able to really be the focal point for execution
mm,
throughout a particular portfolio of projects. Being able to do that, I think, really is a gold standard. Certainly, there's other how do I want to say it, particular efforts. Like I said, if it's put together to solve a particular problem, I personally would not define that as a PMO. I would probably call that more of a tiger team or a fixer team, one of those two. I wouldn't, in its traditional sense, I wouldn't necessarily call it a PMO, but I recognize that certainly in an agile type world that terms are evolving very quickly, and and finding a way to continue to find a center of excellence of some particular type. And I think most organizations, if they were to put a quote unquote PMO together to solve a particular issue, they'll probably find that they're better off, and it's probably more cost efficient to just have the PMO to start with, to continue to prevent those problems from even raising their heads.
Yeah, I mean, I asked this question in one of my class with a particular company, and I said, "What is PMO means to you?" So look, Dharam, PMO means for me is a bunch of beautiful girls with nail polish and busy shopping. That's what that really.
All right. That sounds fantastic. I'm not necessarily sure that answers the question, but all right.
I mean, that's a perception some people have. Like these are the it's just taking meeting minutes, or they're providing you templates and asking you a question. Hey, have you done this? Have you done this? But that's a traditional PMO, and we need to see companies are looking beyond these kind of PMO. Yes, all this is important. We need somebody to take minutes sometime in some busy projects. We need somebody to look after some templates, other things. But that can be few people. The main purpose is how can we strategize, help us organization to achieve the strategic objective as part of and playing major role in that.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I've not been exposed to a particular PMO that they've described, but the ones I've been exposed to certainly have very senior type of leaders, and I would say that they've gone through a lot. They certainly have a ton of experience being able to solve these complex problems, and so I've always been able to look to a particular PMO in that realm, and being able to bring my issues to them, present to them the situation I'm in, how we got to where we're at, and it's always kind of a fallback or a safety net when really everything else that you've tried as a PM is not necessarily worked to the way you want it to. So I guess I've been very fortunate then with my particular experience with PMOs.
I think that's a kind of ideal PMO where what you said is, where you have senior people, experienced people, they know not just typical project management, but beyond. They also they have played a role in a strategic, in the director positions as well. So to me, the PMO, what we're talking here, is a very senior or a strategic role. This kind of supporting up to the C-level people.
Yeah.
They make the decision, but these people analyze. They give you data. They give look at various things which help the C-level or executive board to make the decisions.
I agree, and really, it's really that in between, that steering committee, and they're the ones that PMO is really helping you to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because as we've talked about many times before, Dharam, as a project manager, you're drinking through a fire hose, just trying to do what you need to do to execute at your level. So it becomes very difficult to be looking at that macro vision all the time, and so because you're just in your own little world trying to survive, so to speak. So yeah, having those particular leaders, I think, is very important, and really will keep you on the right track.
Yeah, and I like your analogy about drinking through the fire hose. What fire hose and drinking. That's what most project managers have to do. What you're saying is correct.
It is. It's just you're constantly being a firefighter. A lot of times it seems, but and it can be overwhelming at times. But I think even having that PMO, or even myself, if I didn't necessarily have a PMO, I always just personally had a couple mentors that were certainly senior to me that had been through the fire, so to speak, and were able to really kind of guide me and help me make sure I'm looking at all perspectives to make the most informed decision.
Exactly. Good thought. Thank you for sharing. So how can governance be applied in portfolio, program, and project management?
So I will say I'm probably a bit spoiled, or it depends on your perspective. From a governance perspective, typically in my experience being a defense contractor, and now that Parsons has purchased our company, and I'm getting more and more exposed to the commercial side. But as in my traditional roles that I've been in as a U.S. government defense contractor, with that particular avenue of business, they are the government is government, and being able to work with them and their particular set of requirements, it's very stringent. And so from a governance perspective, it's very easy to know. It's very black and white. There is interesting enough, in some of like the foreign military sales, there is some gray area that becomes very difficult because again, you're in the U.S. government roles where you're typical. It's either you did it or you didn't. There's no in between, and so there's a natural governance there where I would say within the company itself, we wouldn't necessarily have to worry so much about governance. Where we would have to worry about more we would be governing ourselves from a quality perspective, and that I think is the most important from an or an internal stakeholder governance type thing, making sure that we're upholding the best of quality when we're doing an installation, and making sure our subcontractors are living up to the specific requirements that we have, which ultimately we end up falling back on our statement of work that's with the U.S. government. So I don't necessarily have to worry about most of the time a specific governance, but there have certainly been contracts that I've been a part of that, even though they're with the U.S. government, typically you don't necessarily have to worry about maybe the local state governance, but I've also been in part of ones where you're worried about specifically wildlife, endangered species, all those different type of things, and pollution, and disturbing the particular earth that we're at. I remember one of my first particular contracts that I worked on when I was just getting into the business was it's called SBI Net. It was on the southern border. It was like a virtual fence on the southern border of the U.S. And I remember there was an endangered species called the Sonoran pronghorn, and they had a specific mating season, and we could not do a whole lot of work during that time. And so being able to keep a project on schedule is very difficult when you're doing work in a particular protected national park, and the wildlife becomes very difficult. But really from a governance perspective, again, getting back to the real point, within our company, we're constantly focused on quality, because at the end of the day, if you're not doing a good job, that customer is not going to want you back. And so being able to deliver on time certainly is important, but again, quality over a lot of other things, to make sure you do it right the first time, do it safely, and deliver for your customers, really kind of where we kind of live in, as far as from a governance perspective.
So from the PMO point of view, they are there to support the governance structure of your portfolio, program, and project management. So, we need to think, okay, how do we define what kind of governance is applied to my portfolio, program, and project? So the roles and responsibilities are identified, and escalation path, or what is the thresholds are defined. Between that, you can take a decision, and all kind of thing. What we learned in PgMP, PfMP. So that's where I see the PMO can, or project program portfolio manager, can help establish the governance for their project program and portfolio management by setting up agreed processes, agreed principles, practices, protocols. Which,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And PMO can help to implement those, and maybe policing as well. Okay, hey, we have implement, we release this. Have you applied that or not?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's certainly a great role from a PMO perspective, really kind of being that first eye in the sky, so to speak,
Mm,
making sure that we're executing at a high level and living up to the, like you said, from a PgMP or PfMP standpoint, setting that appropriate framework, making sure that those thresholds, whatever it may be, whether from a risk or a financial standpoint, being able to set those hardline specifics within that framework so that everyone has a very clear path of escalation when ultimately it's going to happen, not if, it's when. And being having that set and the PMO would be a very vital part of that. Having that set up ahead of time is going to be able to streamline things and ultimately solve the issues faster. Because if you don't, you're going to have a mess on your hands. Things aren't going to get solved, and it becomes a bit of a catastrophic domino effect.
exactly. Exactly. All right. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. The similar topic, same thing we're talking, continue. How is the PMO measuring success today?
Great question. Again, given that there's some of that subjective definitions from what a PMO is, but I would keep it simple. A PMO is there to assist with execution, as we just talked about governance, being able to help solve issues, building templates so that a PM is not having to start, and reinvent the wheel every time. It ultimately gets that efficiency. And I think from a PMO standpoint, the greatest success in my view, at least, would be being able to streamline and maximize efficiencies in my
Mhm.
view. That I think is the most important, especially in our agile world that we live in today. And so, how would you necessarily define that? I think talking with your program project and portfolio managers that work with that PMO, being able to ask them, hey, what is the PMO providing you the support that you need? Is there something that we can, from a PMO standpoint, help make your life a little bit easier so that you can focus more on stakeholder engagement and being able to take some of that burden off of those component leaders, I think would be very important, and I think really can help manage or define the success of a PMO.
Yeah. And I think some KPIs may be directly related to them, key performance indicators, uh, you know, uh, because they have to be actively working with the project program portfolio managers to provide them required support at the right time so that project program can do what they have to do in order to succeed in their project. So they have to be very proactive. PMO has to be proactive and guide them, direct them, help them to whatever the support they need. To so for me, PMO, there has to be some kind of a baseline. This is what we have been doing. And my their clients being project manager, program managers, there can be some kind of a scoring method, some promoters, just like we have a net promoter score, and they can also have, hey, how much support you give providing, and was the support adequate? Was that the support provided by PMO actually made my life easier or not easier? So that's where I see, successes can be measured from PMO point of view, and PMO can also assist in measuring the success of the project program and portfolio, the KPIs or the what was expected, what they have delivered.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm. All right. Why does the position of the PMO within enterprise matters?
Well, I would think specifically, again, going back to our PfMP and PgMP training, when you're really trying to set those initiatives, making sure that it aligns with the company or the enterprise, so to speak, specific initiatives, the benefits that they expect, and ultimately where they want to be in their roadmap. So I think being within that, the enterprise, I think definitely does matter, so that they are constantly kept abreast of the initiatives that are coming out of the enterprise, because that can always be changing. And so, from a PM perspective, they're not going to be able to keep up with that. So really, that the PMO being that conduit between the enterprise and the component leaders, I think, is very much important. And having that within the enterprise, I don't think you can have it anywhere else. Otherwise, the PMO, I think, would become very costly and not effective.
Yeah, exactly. So PMO being, I think we're more talking about playing strategic role. So when we talk about strategic role, they have to be at the enterprise level as well. When we talk about project level, program level, that can be more tactical, more like supporting. But when we talk about enterprise PMO, EPMO, that is more enterprise level, playing strategic role, assisting the senior leaders in making the right decision. They may do all the analysis and research, provide the feedback or reports to the leaders, and help them to make decisions.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. What are the challenges in the governance of mega projects in the public sector?
Well, I think certainly I've been part of one of the biggest construction projects ever ever been taken up. I think certainly it's an honor to be a part of something so big, but at the same point, it definitely has some of the biggest challenges that ever been faced. And from a governance perspective, as we've already talked about, quality, making sure that the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and the sheer scale of it. That's the biggest challenge, and there's so many different efforts within a specific vertical where it's got different organizations, whether it be logistics and security, or another one with design and implementation and all those different things. And I think the biggest thing is bringing that all together, because it's just natural that things become a bit siloed. And I think a PMO is one of those organizations that really would have to focus, especially on these mega projects, uh, breaking those silos down.
Very important. Yep.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have a bit of a mess on your hands. And again, when you're talking about a huge project that has timelines that need to be met, you have to find efficiencies, or it's just not going to be done, and it's just going to become what we call in the U.S. a boondoggle. That's just going to be a big waste of money, and you got to avoid that. Otherwise, it's just going to be ugly for everyone, and that's not what you want to happen. You want to achieve great heights. I happen to be watching a documentary not long ago about the Burj Al Arab, which is the 7-star hotel there in Dubai, and literally the Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai. Literally, I think the only particular requirements was he wanted to have a structure that was going to be like a world landmark, that that it would be recognizable when people would see it. It'd be recognizable to Dubai. Well, that's a pretty broad perspective, and being able to figure something out where they said it's going to be sitting on the water, and all the architects had submitted their designs of what they thought that would look great, and ultimately it ended up being where they chose what ended up being the Burj Al Arab. But even from an architecture perspective, you can just put that on a computer, but at some point somebody's got to actually build it. And when you start getting into the challenges, certainly within the Arabian Gulf there, with the extreme weather, with the wind and all those different things, and being on the water, that the salt in the water, how that's going, all the different variables that you can go about something like that. And again, it ended up where certainly they did some things very well there, and achieved something that is synonymous with Dubai now. But listening to how they had to overcome so many things, and certainly it had never been done before. They were using materials that had never been used before, and how they had to shape those things to get that curve that you see where it looks like a sail, all those different things. And then even from a governance perspective, being able to import those materials, so governance goes across the board, and even trying to figure out how to get those materials into a country, and then finding someone to build it that's never built it before. So you think about it from a governance perspective, where you think about putting out a tender for particular materials and being able to bend them how they need to be, that had never been done before. How do you even do that? And I think that's where a PMO is vitally important, especially from a governance perspective, to be able to set a scope of work that can, number one, be executable, but then you can also ultimately make sure that they did the job right. It's fascinating to see some of these incredible projects around the world, and certainly blessed here in the Middle East to have that be
Yeah.
surrounded by them.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you go to Dubai and some of these places, I think Doha is one of them coming up, and Riyadh and other places. So much architecture evolving everywhere. I mean, and unbelievable to see that. Oh my God, every building is totally very different, which you have never seen before. And another building, another building. I mean, when you go look at the skyscraper in Dubai, all look amazing. Yeah,
Very
I
much
mean,
so.
yeah. I mean, I happen to have one person. He actually was the program manager for one of the 80-story building. That's the second highest in Dubai, after Burj Khalifa. So he was talking about the challenges. This I think the 3-year program went up to 7 years. 3 billion now becomes $7 billion, and many other challenges because of recessions going on, some downtime, and all kind of things. But yes, that's where we need continuity. Project manager come and go, but we need to have a stable PMO, and with all the structure, defined processes, protocol, who need to do what, and they have to think through so that we don't make any errors. If we make errors, we come back to and fix it and move on, keep going, because the project you're talking about, something very unique, never done it before, and there's a money pressure, time pressure, and a lot of constraints, and you're the head of the kingdom is waiting to see that happening. So a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't. That's the highest pressure cooker that you're going to be involved in when the ruler or the royal family wants to come and visit and ask you, when are you going to have this done? Tomorrow,
yeah.
sir. Yes, tomorrow. We'll have it
No, no,
done.
no. Tomorrow not acceptable. Just yesterday. I was
Yeah,
expecting yesterday.
exactly.
Um,
Absolutely.
and that's where your contract is gone, because you're supposed to be done finishing yesterday.
No doubt on that one for sure.
Yeah. All right. So my next question is, does outsourcing of PMO function improve organization performance?
Justin's perspective, I don't think so. I think we've kind of covered it earlier where it needs to sit within that enterprise perspective, and if you outsource that, I think you'll kind of be strayed from a strategic standpoint. Now,
Mm,
outsourcing specific functions, maybe templates, things like that, maybe so. But that becomes all right. So you have, like you said, continuity, Dharam. When you have, okay, think of it from a project manager standpoint. Okay, I'm going to the PMO because I need something, but then they're going, oh, well, you need to talk to so and so in this other organization to get that. Well, what's the point of the PMO if I got to go somewhere else to get it? So I think that staying with that efficiency mantra, that's not efficient as a project manager to contact the PMO and then be told, hey, you need to talk to someone else. I personally, if you're going to have one, that you have to do it right. You have to provide the specific services that you would expect out of a PMO. Otherwise, I just don't think it works. I certainly could be wrong, but from a strategic perspective, and making sure that you're continuously aligned with the organizational roadmap. I think it's vitally important to keep it within.
Yeah, I mean, look, my viewpoint is a little bit different. Like, if we talk about PMO at two level, one is strategic level, second is more tactical level. So strategic level, definitely we cannot outsource, because that's where we need to have senior people, experienced people who has done the job many times, project many mega billion-dollar work as a project manager. Now they can be the guide and support. So that's where you need to have senior managers, senior people sitting as a strategic role, playing that role. But things like, tactical, with reports, templates, somebody policing. So the thing which, not nobody want to do. Okay, let's get it done. But these people, they are expert in that whatever they're doing. So they're good in managing the template. They're good in managing the processes. So they can do that. So if that add value, that can be another way to see. So that's where, outsourcing, you cannot just blindly do that. You need to see right partner who can really assist us and be a real partner, and hand, if required, they handhold us as well as they support us and do what we are looking for. And I'm sure there are organizations, they are doing it very efficiently. So I'm not saying just don't look into that. Explore the way we can save some money. Like if I want to tax, I want to tax returns. Yes, I can learn things and read it, internet, but the taxes I will rather give it to my accountant who's doing the tax, only taxes day in day out. So they know what to do, what not to do, and where can we make errors and other things. So let the expert handle the some portion, and the strategic PMO or the enterprise PMO, somebody, the senior manager should be part of that.
Well, first off, Dharam, thanks for the reminder on the taxes. I'll get on that. I appreciate that. No, but you are right. Yeah, with that particular perspective, yeah, I agree. You certainly, from the technical perspective, lean on your SMEs on those particulars, which, in my experience, we do that quite a bit, probably too much. I think really what the challenge, especially moving forward for any organization, is building the volume, making sure that your people are you're adding those capabilities within those employees, and not kind of staying static and rinse and repeat. Where how are you getting better? Being able to build the volume of your personnel, being able to add their knowledge and capabilities is certainly important, because we're in this new world that we now have with post COVID, and there's just so much demand. It's very hard to cover all the bases and all the different requirements for all your different customers, and having personnel that can kind of wear a few hats is very much needed, because otherwise you're just simply not going to be able. You can't hire all those folks to be able to do it, because then ultimately there's going to be a drop in demand, and then what are you going to have? What are you going to have them do? And so being able to kind of have dual hatted personnel in a lot of positions, I think will very much be critical to the long term successes of an organization.
Yeah, I mean, I can share my experience when I was working for a company back in Australia. So I was going to play a project manager role in that big program. And I was told by my manager, look, Dharam, you're going to also do the PMO role as well. I have never done it. Doesn't matter. Just look into this, there's learn, and just create some template and do some training. I was okay with that. I did it. I learned. But if the same thing is done by somebody who's doing it day in day out, it's more efficient than what I did. I got exposure to that. Good thing. But what I'm trying to say, the expert in that area, let them handle, and you focus on your core values. You building the bridges, build the bridge. You building the Neom city, build it. Let the other group of people look after. But that's what we do most of the time. Like taxes are done and this is done, payroll is done by somebody else, and so on. Anyway, so again, that's a choice as well for the organization, what they should do and what not to do. We can just tell. But that definitely strategic roles, strategic PMO, enterprise PMO, you need to have right people, senior managers sitting there.
No question. I mean, but the good thing is, Dharam, I think you got thrown into that particular role as a PMO. You never done it. It turned out pretty well for you. I'll admit, same thing where, you kind of get thrown into the fire, or since that's our theme today is firefighting, drinking through fire hoses. That's probably one of the best ways to learn is when you basically get thrown into the deep end and it's either sink or swim, and it makes you better because let's face it, a lot of us don't like to get out of our comfort zones.
Yes.
It's just a natural human tendency. And so, sometimes a boss will do that. You might not necessarily like it, but it's going to end up making you better overall simply because you're going to learn it. And you're going to learn it through a little bit of trial and error, but it'll end up making you better in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah, that part I agree. Okay, now move to the next question. How can project data analytics support future PMO service delivery? You're talking lots of data.
Yeah, I think especially with the PMO nowadays, and again going back to our PfMP and PgMP type training, with the trend analysis and things like that, the more data, not necessarily the more data the better. It's what you do with the data that matters. You can,
exactly.
As we've talked about before, garbage in, garbage out if you don't use it correctly. And so with having these new tools of data analytics and AI and everything else, it's incredible. How lucky are we to be in the positions we are now with all these new emerging technologies. But again, looking from a PMO service delivery perspective, being able to look at that trend analysis and be able to really kind of keep your personnel that are working on these particular components apprised of, hey, this is kind of what we're seeing industry wide. Like, just be aware, watch it on your project. It can really become a great tool to be able to, in your risk analysis and your risk registers, and really just overall the entire execution, stakeholder management, setting expectations with those particular stakeholders. Allow that it's a great discussion topic to it's an excuse to use when you're speaking with your stakeholders, or particularly your customers, like, hey, this is what we're seeing in the industry. Perfect example right now, I'll give you. As we all know, supply chains throughout the world right now are a big challenge. And one of our procurement department has been actively engaged with all of our typical suppliers because it's such a challenge and it's such a project risk. And so we're engaging up front with our customers a lot more and being able to factor that into our schedules. Otherwise, if we're not communicating that up front, there's going to be a lot of people upset because they have a specific expectation of being able to eliminate the surprises, especially when it comes to project delays. I think is very important. And a PMO using those particular data analytics and understanding the trends can help mitigate risks, help better engagement with your stakeholders. Really just the entire picture, I think, is something that the PMO could really help deliver value for.
Exactly. And you correctly mentioned garbage in, garbage out. So the right data and right analysis will help to do the project work more efficiently. And learning from the historical data, what happened in the past project program, and PMO can support that, and identifying the risk. Okay, if that happened in the past program, and are we ready for that? If this happen again, are we ready for that? So that's what it is. Historical information, risk identification, risk mitigation, risk, how to handle the risk, how to utilize the resources. In last project we didn't utilize properly, and that's what the trend telling me. We have a lot of wastage. How can we minimize the waste? and can same resources we can do more work. Yeah.
Yep.
And having the right tool, and I think we didn't talk too much about the tool. There are a lot of tools available nowadays, which and you correctly mentioned some artificial intelligence is involved with it, and a lot of function can be done automatically. Real-time tools are available, which gives some reports, which most of the time project PMO and project manager are looking for. So, and I was talking to you about this particular platform called VXDCC, something where we are exploring that. So something like that can definitely add more value to the organizations.
Yeah, it can help with making real-time decisions based on the particular situations you're in, and especially with all your different components at that PMO level, being able to have that real-time data to understand how you're performing, being able to, if you're behind on one particular component but ahead on another, you can resource level certain things to kind of get everything back on track. That allows for some great flexibility. And again, going back to what we talked about, when your personnel are able to kind of dual hat and use them in different ways, it certainly expands your capabilities and being able to execute at an extremely high level.
Great, thank you. Good. Thank you very much, Justin. This is all the question I had for today, and we had great discussion. And now people probably know the difference between strategic versus tactical PMO and what role strategic PMO can play in the success of the program. The tactical PMO they also play very important role. So look, a lot to learn, and the PMO world is evolving, and I think people have to keep an eye on that, and various tools, various methodologies, and efficiency improvement, digital transformation, and many PMO transformation all happening. So we just have to keep an eye on what's happening and keep learning from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Always learning never stops.
Exactly. So Justin, thank you very much. And I know you're traveling, keep traveling, but still finding time for this podcast is really, I'm very thankful that you are one of my podcast partner, and we are able to collect this knowledge, and hopefully people are finding useful. More and more people are using it, and they are benefiting out of this.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And so thank you very much. And I will see you next time in the next video, next podcast.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.